Herzlich willkommen zurück, liebe Atlanta Falcons Germany Community da draußen und alle anderen NFL-Fans, die sich heute zu unserer Premiere dazuschalten werden. Es ist mir eine große Freude, euch einen Mann heute vorstellen zu können, der wie kein anderer den Geist der Loyalität, der Leidenschaft und der Hingabe der NFL und somit der Atlanta Falcons verkörpert. Ein Mann, der seit 1979 jeden Aufstieg, jeden Fall, jeden Touchdown und jede Interception, jeden Siegesrausch und jede Niederlage für die Falcons miterlebt hat. Bitte begrüßt mit mir keinen geringeren als Mr. Tom Dunn. Tom ist nicht nur irgendein Fan, er ist der amtierende Fan des Jahres der Falcons, ein Titel, der wohlverdient ist und den er sich durch unermüdliche Unterstützung und unerschütterliches Vertrauen in sein Team verdient hat. Sein Engagement ist so groß, dass ihm die Ehre zuteil wurde, die Draftpicks der Falcons auf der Bühne zu verkünden, eine seltene Ehre, die nur wenigen zuteil wird. Im Jahr 2019 war es Tom, der John Kominski, der in der 4. Runde ausgewählt wurde, in der Falcons Family willkommen hieß. Und auch im Jahr 2023 hatte er das große Vergnügen, die Auswahl des Fourth-Round-Picks Clark Phillips III. Zu verkünden. Aber das vielleicht sichtbarste Symbol für Toms Liebe zu seinem Team ist die Fanbulance. Dieser speziell angefertigte Van, dessen stolzer Besitzer und Betreiber Tom ist ein vertrauter Anblick, der bei Heimspielen direkt vor dem Stadion parkt. Und ich kann euch sagen, dass der nicht nur zur Schau da steht. Tom fährt diese Fanbulance auch zu den meisten Auswärtsspielen und trägt damit den Geist der Falcons im ganzen Land zur Schau. In unserem nächsten Gespräch werden wir uns mit Toms bemerkenswertester Reise als Superfan, seinen denkwürdigen Erlebnissen und seinen Gedanken zur Zukunft der Falcons befassen. Seid also bei diesem spannenden Gespräch mit dem Mann, dem Mythos der Legende, Tom Dunn, dem Herz und der Seele der Atlanta Falcons Fangemeinde unbedingt dabei. Ich wünsche euch jetzt viel Spaß bei diesem Interview und Rise Up RTL. Hello everyone in the Atlanta Falcons community here in Germany and all over the world. I'm very happy and thrilled to have you here today. Mr. Superfan, I have to tell it like this, Tom Dunn.
I'm thrilled to be with you and look forward to a great conversation.
A great conversation. I hope this interview will bring us a lot of stories, experiences, and all the history of you and of course of the Atlanta Falcons. We met us on Twitter, and we had a chat about your fanbulance. I told this in the intro, and it was really funny because I checked some photos for something else. And I find an old picture, not old, but a picture from last year. I went to the bands, and it was this one here. And I see, wait, this was the Fambulance. I mean, and I sent it to you, and I said, hey, who are you? What's this nice van? And this was the beginning of a great chat. And then I was, how we can say, in the mood to ask you, can we do an interview for this story of you, of the Fambulance, of this 45 season ticket holder, Tom Dunn, and the time before this. So, I would like to start with you this conversation. I heard you have a lot of time.
Yes.
So let us take the time. I'm really happy that you're taking your lifetime and chatting with us, and I'm very confident that all the people outside there in our community, and maybe also in the community of the Falcons in the States and wherever in the world, are also happy to hear some new insights, information, experiences, history, whatever. So, can you tell us how your love for the Falcons began and what led you become a season ticket holder in 1979? The story or your history starts a little bit earlier, in 1969, isn't it?
Well, it actually, my football obsession, I guess you could call it,
Yeah.
Started back in the early 60s when I was a kid. Now, I grew up in Tennessee, and we didn't have a pro football team there then.
Mhm.
And we got, in those days, you got one NFL game on CBS and one AFL game on NBC. Those are networks over here for those who aren't familiar. And those were the days of the Lombardi Packers. And so since we didn't have our own team, we would get the Packers more often than not. So I actually grew up a Green Bay fan. And so then my aunt and uncle, my uncle was a career Marine, so they moved all around the country and the world. When he retired, they settled in Atlanta. And we would visit fairly frequently because it was about a 2-hour drive, give or take. And my uncle was a football fan. My aunt was a Falcon fan. And so in those days, when the Falcons played badly, which quite often happened, this was in the early days.
Yes.
And the expansion teams didn't get the breaks they have today. They got the dregs of the other teams, and like that. And they were almost designed to be whipping boys for several years. So my aunt and uncle would end up fighting on the way home, over the games and stuff. So he got to where he just didn't want to go to the games. He would stay home and watch it on television. So when we visited frequently, I would go with my aunt to the football games because she knew I loved football and all that. And we didn't fight on the way home from the games. So I got to go with her fairly frequently. So I started to become somewhat of a Falcons fan.
Okay.
Then go forward to 79. My wife and I had married at that point and moved to Atlanta to make a living. And so we bought Falcons season tickets. And we've had them since, and we started out with just 2 and then added more as our children came along. And now the children have grown and gone their separate ways and live in different places and all like that. So now we're back down to just 2 tickets, the wife and I. And we've moved to Orlando, Florida now to be near most of our grandchildren. We still have one, the baby grandchild is in Atlanta. The others are all in Florida. So we came down here and we're daycare for the grandchildren while their parents work and like that. So we drive the Fambulance. We drive to the games because, before 9/11, you could fly quickly and fairly cheaply to the games. But now if you count the time we walk out of the door here till we walk in the door in Atlanta, it's actually faster to drive than it is to fly. Okay. And so the original Fambulance, which you can see on the website and all, it had gotten a little long in the tooth, such that I didn't really trust it for that drive regularly and like that. So we bought the new van and converted it. So it functions double duty, though. It serves game day, and then it also serves for hauling around, haul all the grandchildren and children and everything in it. So
perfect.
That's where that came from.
Very nice. We will have a little bit later the Fambulance itself, so we will show this up. Just a short question. You said you love football so much. Did you play yourself football?
Yes, I played through high school, a little bit of college ball, and then left. It wasn't going. You get to college and it's not fun anymore. It's a business.
It's a business. Okay.
So I decided I'd had enough at that point, and left to pursue other things, other avenues, but I still love the game.
Which position?
Quarterback.
Quarterback.
And in those days, you went both ways. So I played safety on defense and quarterback on offense.
I saw your jersey, the 22, and I was not sure. Is it the Fan of the Year jersey 22?
The one with 22 is the Fan of the Year jersey, 22 being the year.
Yes, but you're wearing in 2019 on the stage the 22 Keanu Neal jersey.
Keanu Neal. Yeah, and that my grandmother was a Neal. That was her maiden name was Neal. So I naturally took an affection toward him anyway. Plus, I enjoyed watching him play. Great player. Unfortunately, he was hurt a lot. But when he played, he was really great. And so that's how that jersey came to be.
Very good. In the community, it's well known that I also played, and I also played safety, just one way, no quarterback. And I had I still have a big love for Keanu Neal, because I loved him, drafting him and seeing him playing. This physicality, it was so nice to see. I was a little bit hurt if he was going to the who was going to the Dallas, I think.
Dallas, yeah.
To Dallas, yes. But it's okay. I'm over it. So Keanu, if something happened, you can come to us. It's no problem. So this,
that's the thing that we found over the years, because we've been blessed over the years to get to know several of the players and their families and stuff, and that's the unfortunate side of the NFL, is it's a business, and players move on and all like that. And you hate to see them playing for the enemy, but you just have to let it go sometimes. And then, it's funny. And especially now that I'm quite a bit older now and the players, they seem like kids to me now. And that's no disrespect. They do, but we stay friends with a lot of the families, the moms and dads and things like that. Nice. And you hate to lose that, where you see them every week kind of thing. But that's just a part of the game now.
It's part of the game. The next question is maybe fits well now. How have the Falcons changed in your eyes since 1979? Which players you have seen over the years have impressed you the most, and why? So maybe you can tell us something about this, even with the background that they're coming all this way.
Yeah, well, of course, when we first started out, you could count on most of the players staying there for a long time. And these days, if you keep a player more than 5 years, that's unusual. Now you'll have a few, but in those days, they pretty much all stayed with you for a long time. When we first started as season ticket holders, Steve Bartkowski, of course, was the quarterback, and he was here for a long time. And asking about the players that impressed me the most, two of the best passers I've ever seen. We're not talking best quarterbacks or anything like that, comparing anything other than just pure passing ability. I think the Falcons have had two of the best passers I've ever seen in Steve Bartkowski and Jeff George. They both threw the ball as well as anybody I've ever seen.
Okay.
Then in the days of Bartkowski, when we were starting out, William Andrews was just an absolute beast. Unfortunately, he got his knee torn up, and that cut his career short. And then, of course, came back, started out, and got knee torn up again. But he was one of those stories that you just wish he could have stayed healthy longer, because he was absolutely incredible. I'm thinking back and kind of moving forward. Of course, Tommy Nobis, he is, in all honesty, taking the Falcons out of it. If you ask me, the player who has been most disrespected by not being in the Hall of Fame, it had to be Nobis.
The first Falcon ever.
The first Falcon ever, and an absolute incredible just block of granite, and you look back, and even in college, he played both ways.
Texas, yeah.
Texas, and I still remember from when I was a kid, because when he came out, the AFL and NFL were separate in those days, and there were separate drafts. And he had been drafted by Houston in the AFL and Atlanta in the NFL. And I can still remember the astronauts, because in those days, space flights were such, they would bring all our classes together and we'd watch it on television, when they'd have these broadcasts. And I still remember the astronauts saying worldwide, "Tell Nobis to sign with Houston," and we got to know him very well over the years. And in fact, if you see behind me that white football, that was a football he gave me after we'd done a donation to the Tommy Nobis Center, which is our favorite charity. And without, I don't want to throw us out of sequence here or plan or whatever, but when we have the tailgates, one person in the group is responsible for the meal each week. Mm-hmm. And they can buy it, they can cook it, they can bring it, whatever they want to do, but they pick the cause for that week. And we don't charge, but we take donations. And then whatever that person picks as their charity of the week, those donations go to that charity. And quite often it's the Nobis Center. And that's what that ball was about donations and stuff to the center. And the center just does incredible work. They take folks with mental handicaps or physical handicaps and train them to do jobs. Mm. And it may be training them to work, somewhere else. Then they also do things there in the center, packing materials for businesses and all like that. And it's just absolutely incredible to see the work they do with folks, because I've always felt any kind of help is great, but if you train a person to do a job and work for themselves, you not only give them a livelihood, you give them a pride and confidence, and a purpose, and so they are probably my favorite charity of all, but yeah, Nobis, he was absolute beast on a horrible team, and it's just the way it was. It's a fact, but he really stood out, and he should be in the Hall of Fame. And I mean, just
is it hurting you a lot that someone of the Falcons, and I mean Mr. Falcon itself, is not in the Hall of Fame? Is it you hurting a lot as a fan?
It does, because I see players in there who don't have anywhere near the career Tommy had, or credentials or whatever. Mm. And but and it's still this way to somewhat, but in the old days of the Hall of Fame, you had one representative for each team. Mm-hmm. That was usually a media member or something like that. And I think the thinking behind that was, today, if somebody slips up, gets arrested, has a problem, it's all over the news, it's all in the papers, the radio, the television, all like that. In those days, they didn't cover that. That was kind of, unless it was just world shattering, you didn't hear about it. Mm. And I think that was the thinking in those days, was that representative from that city would know these little things and know the character of the individual and all that. So if that person voted no, then it didn't even come before the other voters. And I don't want to name names, but the representative from the Falcons those days did not particularly care for Tommy. We're talking about when he first retired and all that. And Tommy came from Texas, and he had that Texas demeanor that he wasn't going to dance around it. He was going to tell you what he thought. And and I think I think that kind of hurt him with the voter. I say the voter at that point. So he never got through to the vote of the membership until after he fell in the senior category. And then they only take one or two a year at most. And so it's a numbers game right now.
Yeah,
but certainly there are lesser deserving players in the Hall of Fame for sure.
Maybe it's also a fact that Tommy Nobis had problems. We could read this about CTE after death. Maybe this is something hits his Hall of Fame career. Could you say to this something? Maybe you think about this like this?
Are you saying because of the market he played in? Is that what you're referring to, or
no? About this. I read in the article I prepared for the Ring of Honor for our website. I read that he had problems at home with the family about being really aggressive, and with this, I don't know, is CTE not the CTE? CTE is the spelling also in English. is this maybe something what is also coming into this, or we don't put it in the Hall of Fame?
I don't think that really factors into it because that was very late in his life that became an issue. And I think by the time it became an issue for Tommy, it was starting to become known, out publicly known that this was a problem, not just with Tommy, but with a lot of players.
Yeah, well,
and it was now the first signs we saw of it were with his wife, who's just an absolute sweetheart, and thankfully still with us. Was like, I remember when we donated the original ambulance to the Nova Center for them to auction off, and his wife saying on the way over that she had to tell him 3 times where they were going, just on the drive over. And but when we were there and whenever we were around him, he seemed to know and all what was going on. But yeah, I don't think that affects him getting into the Hall of Fame, because there are some players in there, who have been diagnosed with it. Unfortunately, most of them have passed. Mike Webster of the Steelers comes to mind, who had very serious issues with it. And I think it's just by the time it came to the point that we knew there was an issue with that, he was into that senior category. And then with that senior category, you've got all these players from over the years in this one pile, and they can only pick out 1 or maybe 2 a year. And I think that's the biggest thing he has going against him now, because I had the honor. Gosh, this has been several years ago. Probably 7 or 8 years ago, I had the honor of preparing a presentation to him for the Hall of Fame committee. And, I didn't present it in person because they meet in private and all like that, but I was honored to prepare the presentation for that. And I got a lot of good feedback from it, but as I say, and as they said too, it's just a numbers game at this point, and getting the vote right at this point. And of course, we were all hopeful we'd get it done before he passed, but that didn't happen, unfortunately. So, we'd like to see it happen while Lynn, his wife, is still with us too,
And you have still contact with his wife?
Yes, occasionally. It's not like we talk every day or anything like that, but we still see her occasionally, and Christmas cards and that kind of thing.
Wow.
But just an absolute sweetheart, and so was he. And my favorite Nova story, if you'll let me, permit me to digress a bit.
Of course.
Go forward. And he's been retired a long time at this point, and he worked for the Falcons still for many years afterwards. Yes. And this was when I was a lay coach at the high school, and my oldest son was playing there at that point, and arranged to take our high school coaching staff to Falcons training camp. And Tommy was escorting us around, and hosting us. And our defensive coordinator, who had played college ball himself and all, and was a big guy, Tommy shook his hand. And after we had moved on a little bit, he turned around to me and he said he could not believe how hard his hand was. He said it's like shaking a rock of granite, like that. And he was quite an old man by this point,
I can imagine that there's a little bit more power in his hand that altogether from us. Nice. Let us come back a little bit to you and your story, and maybe the question of can you recall a particularly emotional game you witnessed live in the stadium? I mean, you see the first Fulton Stadium, you see the Georgia Dome, and you see the third one, the bands, how the Atlanta natives say the bands. Do you have a particular story or particular game? Is it something you say, oh, this was the game? Oof. Yeah.
Oh, well, let's see. I'm thinking in Fulton County, 2 come to mind. The one very high, one very low.
Okay.
The low one would be the playoff game against Dallas after the 1980 season, when the Falcons built up a big lead against Dallas and appeared to be cruising, and then ended up blowing that one.
I've heard this before.
Well, there were two things that come to mind from that game, and you've probably heard both these stories. The first one that comes to mind was they were building up a good lead, and Bartkowski was hot that day. I mean, hitting everything, and they got the big lead, and they just started sitting on the ball, just Andrews right, Andrews left, Andrews up the middle, and punt. And I love William Andrews, but when they're expecting him to get the ball every play, that they started slowing him down. They weren't putting any more points on the board. And then there was towards the end where they ran a trap play, and I believe it was Too Tall Jones. They're opening up the hole and they get the first down. Basically, they can kill the clock and it's over. And it was either Too Tall Jones or Jethro Pugh. I might have to go back and watch the play to be sure. But they trapped from one side and he fell into the hole and knocked the running back down. Didn't tackle him, whatever, just fell into the hole. Didn't get the first down. They got the ball back and went down and won the game. That was one of those where you just sit there for a while and try and figure out what the license plate of that truck that hit you was. On the upside in Fulton County would be against the 49ers, I believe, in 91. And it was the Hail Mary. Chris Miller had gotten hurt, and Billy Joe Tolliver came in. And it was a Hail Mary down to the end zone. And the ball got bounced around and fell into Michael Haynes' hands in the end zone, and they won it. And that put them in the playoffs and all like that. That one was absolutely nuts because it was so unbelievable, and it was such a pile down in the end zone that it was a bit before we figured out who had the ball, and that the Falcons had won it. That one was nuts. If you go to the Georgia Dome, I think my favorite, and there were a lot of them with Matt Ryan, where they called him Matty Ice because he pulled off some miracle comebacks there, certainly with a lot of help. I'm not putting it all on him. But my favorite one there would be one that was much easier, would be the NFL championship after the 2016 season against Green Bay. Green Bay's favored and all like that, and they just blew Green Bay away. And there was something in that game I've never seen before or since, which was the quarterback, Aaron Rodgers, getting an unsportsmanlike conduct penalty for crying on the sidelines because they hit him.
He gets unsportsmanlike conduct for crying?
Unsportsmanlike conduct.
Was not this the game where Erfurt plays a little bit theatrically and falls down? Was this maybe the flag? No.
No, that flag was they just kept hitting him one time right after the other, and he wasn't used to getting hit. Yeah. And finally, he got run out of the sidelines when he took off running, and he threw the ball at one of the Falcons who had run him out of bounds and cursed him, and they flagged him for unsportsmanlike conduct. And I've seen that on every other player, but I've never seen that from a quarterback. But that game, of course, that one sticks out in my mind. But I guess the biggest one, and this was an away game, over all of them would be the NFC Championship against Minnesota after the 98 season. And the same thing, the Falcons had no chance in the game. They're going to get blown out and all that. And then, of course, the Vikings built up a big lead, and the Falcons came back. And Gary Anderson, the Vikings kicker, the Falcons had Morton Anderson, the Vikings had Gary Anderson, had not missed all year, not an extra point, not a field goal or anything like that. They're going to kick this field goal that's going to put the game away. And the PA announcer said later he had not done that all year long. But by this time, they're already passing out newspapers in the stands. They had pre-printed these papers showing the Vikings and saying, "On to Miami." The Super Bowl was in Miami that year. And these are already all over the stands. But when Gary Anderson is trotting out on the field, the announcer calls him Mr. Perfect. And when he said that, my son turns around to me and says, "We're going to win this game." And sure enough, he misses. And the crowd wasn't even looking. He had been so spot on all year long, they weren't paying attention. And we're seeing the officials, no good, no good, and we're going nuts. Well, they're going nuts because they think the game is over and they're going to the Super Bowl. And then the place was really loud. The roof in the old Metrodome was very low, and that's why it was so loud. It just held all the noise in. And it went from, hitting the Richter scale on the nose to just deathly silence like that, And of course, Falcons got the ball, went down and tied it up, and then won it in overtime. So that one would be the most emotional of all of them, I guess.
Wow.
And I can remember we had a pretty decent sized group at that game. It was a charter trip, And I can remember looking around, seeing several people crying and all that, tears of joy.
It was the time I came to the Falcons in 1996, and this was the first big game. I wrote it some weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, I think. I wrote it to Twitter and blamed Jamal Anderson for being a Falcons fan. I have there a small, tiny figure from him. You don't see it. Don't worry. This was the first big game I saw from the Falcons. Unfortunately, we lost then the Super Bowl, but I think it was okay to lose against this Broncos, John Elway, Terrell Davis, Shannon Sharp offense. I think it's okay. From my point of view then, a short-time fan, it was like, okay, they were better, of course. I think we have another Super Bowl trip where it was kind of a little bit different. But the first, I think, was okay to lose. I mean, okay, to put it like this. Or how you felt about this Super Bowl?
Well, it was it was a hard one because you kind of knew the morning of, because the story was breaking on the news the next morning about what had happened the night before with Eugene Robinson being arrested and all that the night before the game. And I can remember coming out of the room because we were sharing a hotel suite with my aunt and uncle, the same ones that are responsible probably for me being a Falcon fan. And my uncle got up very early. That's another habit he kept from the Marines. He was up at the crack of dawn, and I came out of our room to go to the restroom, and he was sitting at the table, and he's telling me, Eugene Robinson got arrested last night. And I'm like, you're just, kidding me, teasing me.
Yes, yeah.
And so I went on to the restroom, came back, and he's holding up the paper with the headline, and you kind of knew then, it just wasn't meant to be. But I think that factored into it. But it is hard the first time. You'll see very rarely does a team win the first trip because, it is a whole new experience. It's mind blowing how big it's become, and I do think a lot of the players, especially young ones, are very affected by that. And so I figure that first trip, it plays into it a lot. There's a lot to be said for the experience, not just of playing the game, but having been through the whole circus around it, for lack of a better term. But we could forgive that. And of course, you think, well, we'll be back. And of course, it's hard to get back. And it was a while. And then, of course, you go to the one in Houston a few years ago. That one was unbelievable. The only saving grace about that is, and I'm sure there are 300,000 Patriot fans who swear they were there for the whole thing, but with very few exceptions, the Patriots fans were gone.
Yeah.
They were gone by, before the third quarter was over. So, but that was, and I think the blame for that falls, and somewhat is probably rightly so, but I think the blame for that game comes down to two things. And one was they had just run the defense ragged. They were playing so hard and so fast, and that's why Brady couldn't get anything going for 2/3 of the game, and they started to wear down, and you had a couple of guys get injured, so they couldn't rotate as often as they wanted to, so the defense really started to slow down. And then I think the single most significant play is not the holding call, not this, not that, was the strip sack on Matt Ryan. And you see Hightower coming around the Falcons' right while Matt's getting ready to pass, and Devonta Freeman as the pickup. And he doesn't have to block him. All he has to do is get in his way, make him step to the side, make him move just a little bit, and the ball's gone. And he didn't even try to get in his way. Let him go straight to Matt and hit and strip the ball. And I think I TiVo every game, even though we're there, because there are little things live. And I don't want to give up the live experience because there's an atmosphere and stuff that you don't see, you don't experience watching on television. No. But the other side of that, there's things you see on TV that you don't see live, So I always TiVo them and usually watch. Sometimes I'll watch the whole game. Sometimes I'll just remember the times and go back and watch. Well, it was several weeks before I could watch that. And when it gets to that play, the strip sack, you see Kendrick Robinson, I believe, was breaking free at the 50 and nothing but grass in front of him in the end zone. So Matt has a half second longer and the game really is over. Because I was getting all these texts from people in the third about this one's over. You're going to be leading the parade, the Hall of Fame parade in Canton, Ohio, every August. Our group of the Ultimate Fans group.
Okay.
They the fan from the team that won the Super Bowl marches in front of the float and carries a Lombardi trophy. Not the real one. They don't trust us with that. But all these guys are telling you're going to be carrying the trophy this year and all like that. And I'm telling them, no, it's too soon. It's too soon.
You said the same, isn't it? You say the same. It's too soon because I never was like, okay, we have this one, not in the halftime, not in the third quarter. I was really like, okay, just wait. We have 60 minutes. We have 4 quarters. The last whistle has to blow, and then we will see if we have won or not. And exactly. You say about several weeks to watch the game again. I never see the game again. I would never see it again. I can't. And I was really the first time in my life as a sports fan to be this one day after, like, I won't say killed, but was like demoralized, depressive. It was like the Monday after. This was a really bad day for me. And maybe a question to this, not even for you personally. What was the feeling in Atlanta to this time? I mean, it's a question I would bring it a little bit later, but we are at this point now. How was all the society, all the fan base in Atlanta after this directly inside? Can you tell us there something?
Well, you have a feeling that we're cursed, because of course a lot of people were celebrating, before that game was over, and like my youngest son, he was watching it with a bunch of friends in Atlanta. And he said by the third quarter, he was one of the few actually watching the game because the rest have decided this is over and they're partying and celebrating. And I'm sure a lot around Atlanta was that way, and it was not just Atlanta, everybody you talked to who wasn't a Patriot fan was behind the Falcons because, everybody's kind of sick of the Patriots by this point, again, you always think, well, we'll be back next year, and of course it didn't happen. And
it was close. Next year was close.
Yeah? Next year was close and got down in there and should have been, at least should have gone at least another game, no doubt. But yeah, it takes a while to get over that. And Atlanta, unfortunately, is a fair weather town. And that's not just the Falcons, that's college football, that's the Braves, the Hawks, all that. And a big reason for that is I always say there are only 3 people that are actually from Atlanta. You know, it's a business town, and if you grew up in Chicago and you're raised a Bears fan and your company transfers you to Atlanta for a few years, you may be a football fan and you may come to the Falcons games, but you're still a Bears fan at heart. And that's Atlanta seriously is a high percentage of transplants. You know, they're just there because of their jobs and all that.
Okay.
So you don't have that hardcore lifelong fan, you know, like you have in a lot of places.
Is this we talk about in our last podcast or live talk this Tuesday, last Tuesday? Is this the reason or one of the reason why the bands feels like empty when you watch the games? I mean, they said they sell out the games, and I was there for 2 years, in 19 and 22, and 4 games in total. I saw the Buccaneers games in 2019. There was about, I would say, 40% on the seats. I mean, it's a nice stadium. You can eat very well. You can see a lot. You have 2,000 LED screens. You don't miss the game if you don't want. But is this a reason, what you tell us right now, that maybe they are not so into it, or
I
not
think
so on the seats and supporting the team? Maybe.
I think that plays into it. That definitely plays into it. And the nature of the stadium is that there, in my opinion, too many other things to distract you from the game. And especially if you see it on TV and they swing along the lower levels, it looks like it's empty because you don't see all the people down on the patios and the bars and stuff, you know, where they can kind of pile together and watch the field and kind of figure out what's going on. And it depends too on how the Falcons are playing overall. In other words, if they're still in the hunt, there'll be a lot more focus on the game. If they're not doing well, then you're not going to have the big crew of people there, you know, watching the game. But I do think you're right in that not a lot of lifelong Falcons fans there. And then just so many other distractions in the stadium, so many other things to do while the game is going on. And I think that is somewhat of a mistake in the design of the place.
Okay. Interesting. I mean, maybe it depends also on the opponent, because I had the Buccaneers game. It feels like empty. And on Thanksgiving, the 3 times or 4 times kickoff, onside kick from
Onside kick,
against the Saints, the bench was full. And all the fans were cheering and screaming. And I told the community here, if you want to see a game in the bands, go to the Saints game, because there is this crowd. And it was so much fun to see it. I mean, I think it's maybe depends on the opponent as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely it does, and you can see that. Like I met a man. I don't know him very well, but I've met him. We've talked a few times. He picks one game each year that he sells his tickets to, and he says, like, Dallas is always his favorite because he said he can make enough off Dallas tickets to pay for all the rest of his season, you know. And you do see that, particularly Dallas. Green Bay is another one that you have fans. Pittsburgh, you know, a few teams like that will pack it out. And the Saints game, you know, and this goes back. A friend of mine who's from New Orleans, and he asked me, he's quite a bit younger, and he asked me, how did this rivalry get so nasty? And it was because, you know, the Saints only came 1 year after the Falcons into the league. And they were a victim of that same type thing with expansion teams. You were designed to fail for quite a few years. And both teams were so awful for so many years that when they played each other, it was a fairly even match. And that was like, this is our Super Bowl. You know?
Nice.
So if you won that game, that was bragging rights, you know, and that has never quieted down over the years. It stays that way. And it's a part of it, it's a drivable distance. So if somebody can't afford to fly, they can load up the car and drive up, you know. So a lot of that.
How long you drive to New Orleans?
It's about 6.5 to 7 hour drive from here to Atlanta. Now that's assuming, you know, a couple of bathroom stops, maybe a fuel stop, and if you eat, just grabbing it in the car and eating it on the way. You know, if you decide you want to sit down dinner or something, then you're going to start stretching it out. But the same token, by flying, you know, they want you to be at the airport 2 hours before the flight now. So driving to the airport and then a couple hours before, assuming it goes on time, takes off on time, which is never a safe bet these days. Then you get there, you got to get your luggage, you got to get your vehicle and all like that. So it's just as faster to drive. So, it's the Falcon Stadium, and they work on it. What I would like to see the Falcons, and I don't know exactly how you get there, but to get more of a college atmosphere in there, because I've been there for college games and that kind of thing and seen a lot. But when you get college games, the vast majority of the people are hardcore for their team. You know, somebody, again, this same guy that's from Chicago, he's probably not going to come and cheer for Georgia Tech or something, you know. But in the Southeast, you know, they say football is a religion, you know, and the Southeast is sort of a hotbed of college football. So whoever they have in there, it's usually packed out and rocking. But you know, then you got everybody loyal to the teams and watching the game. And pro football, like I say, sometimes it gets away from the game and gets in all this other stuff going around, you know. But yeah, and again, with the crowd, if the Falcons are doing well, it's going to be a whole nother atmosphere than if they're doing badly. And that's just the nature of the Atlanta crowd, you know.
Oh, okay. Let's jump. You talk about the drive, and I think you use your ambulance, your van. Let's talk about a little bit of this, because I think I saw your van as well in 2019. And I think I made also a picture. I didn't find it right now, but I'm very sure because I saw this big Falcons logo on the van and said, "Oh wow, this is very nice." And I find something I didn't realize it before, and I will bring you now here, and hopefully everyone can see it. When you see in the top, I maybe put it here with a mouse. You have also the eyes of the Falcon, put it over the window. And this looks really, really awesome. I mean, this is designed by who?
That was I have to say this. The idea was mine, but my oldest son designed it and made it work.
Very good.
And my oldest son designed the big bird on the side. And of course, he didn't design the bird itself, but the fit and how to place it on there and all that. And he made that work on the front for me. And I always, when people ask about it, I try to show them that too, because so a lot of people like yourself, they never see that, you know, if it's parked or like that. But now the logo, my youngest son designed. He's the one that came up with the name Fambulance. But on the original ambulance, which started life as an actual ambulance,
Yeah.
and retired, and I bought it and we worked it over. We had players on the side.
Maybe
And
we see it here in the second picture, isn't it?
yep, that's it.
This is the
Over there
original
to the
one.
right. And there,
Yeah.
that's Vic and Steve Bartkowski on that.
Yes.
And that was a perfect example of why we decided not to go that route, because what we tried to do with that one was have on each side one current player and one of the greats on there. Here, Vic was current then, and Bartkowski was, the great from the past we had on there. And of course, we know what happened with Vic. And so we wanted to make a change. At that point, he hadn't even had his trial or anything. So I'm a firm believer in you're innocent until proven guilty. But, a lot of animal groups and things were very upset about that. And I was really concerned about the vehicle being vandalized, when we weren't right there with it. So we, had to make an emergency change on the players then. And we redid the graphics a couple of times, but like Tommy Nobis was always on there, and Jesse Tuggle, and Bartkowski, but the fourth player kind of rotated. And but because of, like something like that happening and needing to change it quickly and all that, we decided with the new one to go a different route and just go more Falcons design. So we wouldn't be in a situation where, we got to change the graphics right in the middle of the season. And it was kind of fun, because what happened was, to do that, my son just started looking through the players and carefully looking at them both from memory and from photos to find a player who had roughly the same skin tone and like that, and how the arms could be positioned. So we just ended up just changing the jersey and the face mask on the logo and made it Algie Crumpler, who was my personal favorite at the time, was Algie Crumpler. So that worked out very well. But it was to avoid something like that again. We said, we're just going to stick to, when we do this again, we're just going to stick to Falcons design. So, you're good through the year at least.
And in which year you changed the Fabulous 1 to Fabulous 2?
2018 was when we brought out the new one.
2018. So it's quite new.
Yeah, it's new.
Okay. Yeah, so
when we retired it, and I wasn't sure if we were going to move into the new stadium, because the PSLs and the trip, for every game, and all that. So I didn't start it immediately with them. In other words, we had a year without having a special vehicle. But I decided, well, we're gonna do it with the new stadium and all that, and do it. So then we started working on it, but it took a while to plan it and get it executed and all like that. So we did one year where we just, we're driving our minivan, our regular vehicle and all like that. Then we brought the next ambulance out in 2018. And plus, at the time too, construction and all that going on, we didn't know where we were going to be parking and what the tailgating situation was. And all that. So that the whole thing kind of figured into, well, even when we decided, well, we're going to the games, we're not going to be able to pull off this tailgating headquarters, for lack of a better term, this quickly. So we'll just wait and do it next year. And that way I was able to special order the vehicle and get exactly what I wanted on the vehicle and have a good base to work with.
Because now you stand always in front of the bands at the old Georgia Dome place.
Right.
There where the tailgating is. Yeah.
Right. And now the photograph we had of the old ambulance, that's where we parked for years, which was on the southeast corner of the old dome. And we parked there.
The dome in the background, you see the dome, yes.
Exactly. And we were there for many, many years. And then when they started construction on the new stadium, that became the staging area for the trucks and earth movers and cranes and stuff. So they moved us into other lots. And that's where this photograph here of the new Fambulance was taken. The official name is Fambulance 2.0, but it's normally just Fambulance. That's where we parked during the construction of the dome, the new dome, the bins. That's where we parked during the construction in the first year it was open, because the Home Depot backyard where we park now,
that's
where we expect to park as long as we're still able to go to the games, sits where the old stadium sat. And the project got behind in progress and did not open on time. Originally it was supposed to open that spring, and the first event was supposed to be a soccer game. And then they had some other things scheduled, but they were pushing it so to get it ready that it ended up the first event was a preseason football game, Falcons game, which I prefer anyway. I'd like the first event to be a Falcons game,
Yeah, against the Cardinals, isn't it? Was it the Cardinals?
I'm trying to remember. For some reason, I remember the first preseason game in the old Georgia Dome.
Okay.
But I would be afraid to say, preseason games, they tend not to stick in my mind because,
it's a preseason.
They're entertaining for a few minutes and then they become monotonous. So we don't even go to a lot of the preseason games, even home games. And it's very rare we travel to an away home game. An away preseason game, I should say. But I do remember that was for one of the reasons why the eye at the top of the stadium didn't open for the first several games.
You call it the eye? Is it the eye? It calls it the eye. Okay.
To me, it looks like the eye of a camera lens.
Of course. Yeah.
And so that's what I call it, is the eye. I'm not sure what the official name is because that's what I've always called it. But the contractor, he had said, because people were, teasing him about not being able to open it and all like that. You spend all this money and it won't work. But the contractor had said, and I don't recall the exact number of days right now, but I need this number of days with no activities going on in the stadium where we can get this thing adjusted. He said, it's all there, it's functional, we just have to get it adjusted.
Okay.
And when they opened it, it wasn't ready. Well, then we had a lot of events, just bam, bam, bam. You had the Falcons preseason games, you had college kickoff, all this stuff going on. And so it was a few games into the regular season when we had a break with a couple of away games in a row, and they got it squared away quickly. But it was a treat the first time they opened it. And then this was just a test. They weren't actually going to use it that game. But we were sitting there, and as you could see from that photo, we had a pretty good view of the roof and watching that thing open and close and all that. And at that point, I think it took them about 90 minutes to open and close it.
90.
But they're just opening and adjusting, and that kind of thing. Okay. Now it's 8 minutes, I think.
8 minutes.
Open it and less to close it. And but it's a nice touch, and kind of sets the stadium apart from the rest. And it is a beautiful place. A lot of great things about it, and that's just that would be my one complaint, is that there's so much stuff in there that it distracts from the game.
Okay.
And I'm the type that once the game starts, I don't need cheerleaders, I don't need bands, I don't need this and this. My focus is on that game.
Only football. Yes, very good.
Yeah.
When you're comparing all the three stadiums, I mean, you saw them all. What was maybe in this time, when you go into this time back, can you say this is my favorite stadium?
Well, I would have to say my favorite would be the old Georgia Dome.
Old Georgia, okay.
The main reason being, as I say, all the distractions in the new stadium tend to distract from the game. Now, it doesn't distract me. It doesn't mean I'm any better than anybody else or whatever like that. It just means my attention isn't on that. But it irritates me that so many people don't pay attention to the game.
Okay.
And like I'll talk to people, fans of other teams and stuff, and I say, man, that place is empty. No, if they watch again and see when they scan across the team, look at all the crowds behind there. They're just not in their seats.
Yeah, seats, yes.
But it's a better stadium. Now, Fulton County, the original, it was awful. For football, it was awful.
Was a baseball stadium also, isn't it?
Yeah, it was baseball and football. And in those days, that's just the way it was, because the government usually built the stadiums. And so they weren't going to build a baseball stadium and a football stadium and a soccer stadium, and this and
ice
that.
hockey, everything.
You got one stadium for everything. And the 50-yard line in Fulton County were the worst seats in the house because you were so far from the field.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So where we sat, now our original season tickets there were up on the upper level.
Okay.
And they were fairly close to the 50. And it's not as critical in the upper level because you can see the whole field. But from the lower level, if you wanted to really watch the game, you did not want to be on the 50-yard line. So when we moved downstairs, we got our seats over the dugout where the Falcons came out of. The teams came out of the baseball team dugouts. That's where they went to the locker rooms and came out. So we had our seats down over what I called the Falcons dugout. And we were probably midway up the lower level because we were kind of down in the corner. So it was superb viewing when they were on your half of the field, not so much when they went to the other half of the field. And in those days, the TV screens weren't much, and originally, you didn't see replays and stuff on the scoreboard. You were lucky to get a score and not high definition or anything like that. But you were closer to the team and the players when they were on your end of the field. So it was a compromise, and that's where we stayed the whole time after we moved down there at the old Fulton County Stadium.
So your seats are the same now?
No. We when we moved to the Georgia Dome, the Georgia Dome, we started out on the upper level, close to the 50. And we moved down to the lower level, and we were in several spots in the lower level. The last 10 years or so, we were about 8 rows behind the Falcons bench, right on the 50-yard line.
Very nice.
And they were about the perfect seats, because if you went any lower, now the cameras and stuff on the carts moving back and forth block your view and the team and all like that. So you didn't want to be any lower. But at one point, we had sat on the top row of the lower level when we first moved to the lower level of the Georgia Dome. And looking back when we were trying to decide where we were going to sit in the new stadium, I remember those being my favorites of any seats I'd ever had, because in the Georgia Dome, there were no barriers or rails or anything behind you. So the only reason I'm going to get up during the game is if I have to make an emergency bathroom run. Okay. And if you're down several rows, you got to come up the stairs and fight through people going in and out and all that.
Fight. Yeah,
well, in those, nobody would, get behind me, and nobody came in front of me walking up and down the aisle, because when you had to get out, you just went over the back of your seat. You go straight to the restroom, straight back to your seat. Perfect. And if you timed it right, you wouldn't miss anything. If your timing was poor, you might miss a play or something, but that was about it.
Professional. I see. Tom is professional.
Exactly. So when we were selecting seats in the new stadium, that's what I asked for, was back row of the lower level. And originally they had offered us front row of the upper level because view was thing for me and all, but my wife didn't want to do that because she'd gotten spoiled by being on the lower level, and she didn't want to go up that far, and she enjoys the game, but she's not as hardcore as I am. So seeing the whole field is not as important to her as it is to me. But the upper level does give you the best view, of all the action. But the lower level in the new stadium, they have a lot of handicap seating and stuff behind the seats. So it's not as convenient as the old dome, but it's still, and it gives me a good view. I'm high enough that I can see the whole field, because even when we were down behind the Falcons bench, it was great if they were, right in here, but if they get out to the ends or whatever, it's kind of tough to see. Well, the upper row of the lower level affords you a good view of the entire field. So that's why I like that.
That's real nice. Give me just maybe one sentence, or maybe you can tell us how was the first time you went into the bands and the new bands with the big screen, 10K, round circle display, the roof, everything. How was it?
Well, the first time, I'm as guilty as anybody else of mainly looking at the building and all like that, which was why I went to both preseason games the first year. Because normally what we do for preseason games is our seatmate that sits with us, she's part of our group, has been forever. She has two and we have two together. Well, one of the preseason games, I give her our tickets, and one of the other preseason games, she gives us her tickets. We do that. But the first year we all went to both of them, because I knew the building was going to be a new experience, and learning this and figuring out where everything is and just seeing all the new stuff. You're like a kid in a candy store, going through there, concentrating on it. But it is impressive. It's a beautiful building. I think now I have not been in the new Las Vegas stadium. God willing, we'll be there next year because the Falcons play there next year. But other than the Las Vegas,
you mean Super Bowl?
No, the Falcons actually play the Raiders here next year.
No, I mean the Super Bowl. We play in Las Vegas.
Oh, you're talking
Super Bowl. What
calendar year? I'm talking next season. Yeah, well, hopefully we'll be there sooner than expected and be there this year.
Easy. Arthur Smith said it. Drake London said it. We play for 21 games. It's easy. Exactly. So I don't know what we're missing now.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, it's see, I'm already on this year. Last year's gone, and I'm on this year, and then next year is 24. But yeah, it'd be nice to be back this year too. And I do feel good about the team this year, but I've been in all of them, the new one in Los Angeles and Dallas and all that. And I would take the Benz over any of them at this point.
Okay.
Now it's kind of an arms race, when as they build these new stadiums, everybody tries to top the last one. But I still think overall this one is the best, and
good to hear.
Los Angeles, it's a beautiful facility, but it's tough to navigate, the way things are designed and the way the ceiling is. At times you're blinded by the light, the sunlight and all that kind of thing. Again, it's a beautiful facility. It's way better than stadiums of old and a lot of the newer ones, but I'd still take the Benz over it and Dallas. And Dallas, when we went down there, the Falcons played there, I think the first year it was open. And I had wondered why they put so much into the TV screens and all that until you got down there and we did a tour of the stadium. And the lowest level of seating or suites or whatever are actually below ground level. Okay. So you're actually looking up, and it's the same kind of thing where if they're right in front of it, it's great. But if they're down here, you can't see a thing. So I think that's why they invested so much into TVs down there. So if you can't see it on the field, you can look up and see it on the screen,
Okay, then I can stay at home.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Okay. And, of course, there was a lot of objection to the PSLs and stuff with the new stadium here in Atlanta. And I think that was a lot of the motivation behind the cheap food at the new stadium. but it is great. A soda is $2 or $4 depending on whether you want the big souvenir cup or the little paper cup. You can refill it the whole game. Well, like in Dallas, that's like $12. Wow. And they had I remember they had a neat popcorn bucket that had the lenticular photo of the stadium around it. And I thought, well, I'd like to have one of those, but it was like $20 or something, and same thing's $2 in the bins,
Sorry, I didn't want to buy the franchise, only popcorn, please.
Exactly. It's just absurd. And with the bins, the preseason games, we don't normally get much food because we tailgate, and like that. But preseason games, we eat in there, and I can feed myself and the wife for $10.
It's amazing, delicious. It's amazing, delicious. I checked out about 4 restaurants, let's call it like this, and everyone was very, very nice and very good. You can go out here and you have maybe lower quality, as in the stadium. So it was really, really surprising, and I enjoyed it. So for so low dollars, so low money. So it's
and it proves something I'd always believed, was that if they charge more reasonable prices, they'll make more money in the long run. And they showed, like, the first year of the cheaper price foods, per person spending went up 15%. And then the second year they said, well, all right, this is working. Let's lower some more things and all. And it went up again. I think it was, if I recall correctly, the second year was like 20% per person spending. So if all these places would figure out, if they would charge a more reasonable price, people will buy a lot more, and the profit is going to get bigger.
In this case, tell me, please, how you see, you personally, and maybe in the community, the owner, Arthur Blank. How is his standing? I mean, we see him as the grandfather, the Don, the person who is a philanthrope, wins prizes for this, writes in his books how he handles his workers and his companies and everything. How is it for you inside as a fan in Atlanta? Is it the same viewing on Arthur Blank, or is there something you say, maybe you can do this better or this better? Is there something?
Well, I feel strongly both ways. Mm-hmm. Although I will say this, my opinion of him is getting better and better as he goes along.
Okay.
Everything's gotten a lot more expensive since he got there. But as you look around the league, that's a common problem. So I'm not going to just hang that on, well, Mr. Blank is the only one raising the prices on this or that. A lot more expensive. The PSLs moving into the new stadium was something we'd never had to deal with. And PSLs, I don't know if how much that happens in Europe. But the concept of that came from college ball. Mm-hmm. Because in college teams, some schools basketball, but all the big football schools, to be able to buy season tickets, you have to make donations to the school. That determines what level you can buy your tickets at based on how much you've donated.
Okay.
Well, when the Panthers owner was trying to build a stadium up there, he's the one that, well, let's kind of, pardon the language, bastardize that concept into PSLs. You're going to pay this much for the right to buy the ticket. The biggest difference being, if I donate it to the University of Tennessee, that's tax deductible. I can write that off my income taxes. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. If I buy my PSLs for the Falcons, that is not tax deductible.
Okay, I understand.
So in ticket prices now, to be fair, the first couple of years that Mr. Blank, Arthur owned the team, he got a lot more people in there because while he
No
raised
surprises.
the lower level seats and stuff like that up in the end zones and stuff, he cut them to where almost anybody could afford them. You know, if you were slinging hamburgers for a living, you could afford season tickets, you know, and sit up there. So, you know, it's not all been bad, but he does, you know, he's got a more professional operation in the stadium, certainly. We were very fond of the old administration too, so I don't want to, not bad mouthing them, but the stadium was run by the county in those days, and then it was very up and down depending on where you were. There were people there that you loved that worked there, and you couldn't wait to see. And then, but you go in the stadium now, and I rarely, if ever, have seen any of the people that work there not be very kind and helpful and pleasant and all like that. So that's one of the things I give him a lot of credit for that doesn't get much attention. Now, the media and fans a lot, of course, they want to blame the owner, you know, when things aren't going well and like that. And I've yet to see Arthur suit up and throw a pass or run the ball or whatever like that. You know, there's only so much the owner can do in that method, but he has done, particularly the last few years, and he's made a lot of very seriously good donations to great causes, you know. And I think a lot of it is he sees himself getting older. And, you know, we pray he's got many more years, you know, left. But I think he's, you know, seeing I'm older and I want to leave some good, you know, from all this. And he's doing a lot of that. And I will say this, too. One of the highlights of this Fan of the Year thing, when I checked in, you know, part of that was going to the Super Bowl and all. And when I checked into the Super Bowl down there, I had a personal letter from Mr. Blank. And I was really touched by that, the things he wrote. I've been having some health issues and stuff like that, and I don't want to get overly dramatic with that. But, you know, everything's going well. But he wrote me quite a bit of, you know, about that and all. And he'd been through the same kind of thing and all. And then at the NFL honors that week, he came to us, you know, and reached out to us and like that. So, and not like a PR kind of thing, just us and him talking, you know, that kind of thing. And that's another thing too that impressed me with him right off the bat. When the first year, in fact, if my memory served me correctly, he had made the deal with the Smith family to buy the team, but it had not been approved. You know, there's that lag in there of several months. And I believe it was in that period we were in Green Bay, and he came to find my wife and I, and just wanted to sit down and talk to us about what we thought was good about the old operation and what we felt like needed to be changed and that kind of thing. And was seemed to, you know, be sincerely interested in what we thought and like that. And of course, one disadvantage he has as far as interacting with the fans and stuff is now everybody knows him, knows what he looks like and all like that. So he can't just venture out into the crowd and things like that. Like before Arthur bought the team, like Taylor Smith, you know, who ran the team after Rankin Sr. died, he would come out to the tailgate and stuff like that and like that. But he wasn't on TV, you know, 2 or 3 times a week. So, you know, he could walk through the crowd and nobody know who he does. Arthur Blank can't do that because everybody knows him, you know, whether they love him, whether they hate him, they know him, you know. So, I think at heart he wants to win as much as anybody, you know, and I think for him it's probably more pressing. And again, I wish him many more years, but, you know, he looks at it and he says, how many more years do I have, as opposed to, you know, some guy that's in his 30s coming to the game. He's got time to wait. I don't, you know. And so I think he's doing his best, you know, and nobody's perfect, you know, and certainly I think he'd be the first one to tell you he's made mistakes, but I do think he wants a successful team. There are some teams that, especially in the older days, that really didn't want to win because your expenses go up if you're going to the playoffs and things like that. Okay. And I don't think that's an issue with Arthur. No. I don't think the Smiths too were unfairly branded with that, but the Smiths spent a lot of money. They were one of the first teams to build a whole separate facility. The old one at Swanee, when they did that in the 70s, that was unheard of. And they were the ones that and then when they started the new one, that's the current one at Flowery Branch, they were responsible for building that. Now Arthur has kept adding on to that, make it nicer and nicer and all like that. But I do think the Smiths were unfairly branded with not knowing what they were doing or not being willing to spend the money, which was absolutely not the case. The Smiths left a lot of money on the table to stay in Atlanta in with the thing for building the Georgia Dome, because we kind of all felt like they were headed to Jacksonville. And they left a lot of money on the table to stay in Atlanta. And I think that's when Mr. Blank too, is that he's loyal to Atlanta. So I give both owners the credit for that. So like I say, they get a lot of blame, not deservedly so, and they do make mistakes. But I think he does sincerely want the team to win as much, if not more than we do,
There was, I have to ask this question because we had a lot of conversation in the time where the Falcons hunting Deshaun Watson, and how was the time for you as a fan with all these backgrounds, with all the stories behind Deshaun Watson and what you had there with the women? I mean, we see Arthur Smith and Terry Fontenot to make it so professional and bring all the pressure on these two person. I would say it like this. But we had, for us here in Europe and Germany, we had the idea, or we see it like maybe it was Arthur Blank who was hunting Deshaun Watson. How was it in Atlanta in this time for you as a fan? Did you go with this idea and this, let's call it business decision to get one of the best quarterbacks, or is it maybe, oh please, we don't want him, he could be the best of the best but not with this background? How was it?
Well, I think it was split 50-50. Some of the fan base really wanted it, thought it was a good move. I did not want it because I think, and Deshaun Watson is an incredibly talented individual, but clearly there were some problems there, and we've been through it with Michael Vick. And let me just say this about Michael Vick. He's the first Falcon that I ever saw that you would go to other cities and there were people coming just to see Vick. He was kind of like Michael Jordan, and the Hawks, they would only sell out 2 games a year when the Bulls were in town, because people came to see Jordan. Vick was like that. And Vick, when he was on, was the best there was in the league at the time. Now, when he was off, not so much, but he had a lot of talent. And I have a lot of respect for the way he handled himself after all that started to come out. And he ended up in jail and prison, but he manned up and he took the blame for it. He made mistakes going in, one of which I think his biggest mistake, as a matter of fact, might have been lying to Arthur Blank when he asked him about it. I think if he had told the truth, that Blank would have done his best to help him. I really believe that. But having been through all that, I was flabbergasted that there was even a consideration of taking this on. This, because it's going to be a long time before all this dies away with Deshaun Watson. Because there's still some lawsuits pending and all this and that. And no doubt he has the talent, but I don't like the circus it would bring with it, the distractions. And you saw that a lot with Vic. When the team would check into the hotel, most of the team would get off buses and come in one entrance. Vic would come in a different vehicle and come in a back entrance and that kind of thing. Now, I understand that because, again, it's a circus around him. But I don't like the message that sends to the other 52 players on the team, that this guy, he gets special treatment like that. But as far as moving on from Matt Ryan and all, I was fine with that, even though I still think Matt was playing at a high level. What was that, 7-9 his last year here? And of those 7 games, probably 5 of them they lose if it's anybody else at quarterback. And the offensive line was just so horrendous. He was a miracle man to pull off what he did back there. But it's clearly apparent at that point we've got to basically rebuild this team, both lines, offensive and defensive and all like that. Matt needs to go somewhere, where he's got a chance to win now. Now, that Indianapolis thing turned out to be a train wreck, and I could go on for days about that. And sooner or later, we're going to have to bite the bullet on the salaries, he and Julio and a few of these other guys. So we got to rebuild. Let's just do it now. Let's bite the bullet and take the pain now and build toward the future. So I was fine with that. I did not like the way it was handled. To me, the way it was handled was like a couple of junior high school boys, doing it or something.
Okay.
It was completely unacceptable. This guy's been the life of the franchise for this 14 years. Yeah. You owe him the respect to tell him what you want to do. It's kind of like, when Jerry Jones bought the Cowboys and firing Tom Landry, and he hears about it on the radio and all that. You bought the team. It's your right to do what you want to do. And I don't think necessarily this was Arthur that made the decisions about how it was handled. But the man's giving you that much choice. Tell him we're moving on with the new coach. Just tell Matt we're rebuilding. We're going to move you where you want to go, what we can do, whatever. You don't handle it the way you did. But like I say, what they did was fine. How they did it was horrible. But I do think Deshaun Watson was a big mistake just because of the distractions he brings. I like, on the whole, where they're going with the team. Rebuilding, spending a lot of one-year contracts here and there to bring in youth and that. I like that. I like very much where the team is headed. But, and with Ritter coming on, he's not perfect by any means. He needs work. But every game you watched him play, he got better. And that, to me, is the most important thing, seeing improvement.
This very good. Let me please stop once again to Matt Ryan. Because all of this Deshaun Watson story and the release or the trade to the Colts with Matt Ryan, what do you think? Are you waiting for a special ceremony or a special treatment to Matt Ryan? I mean, now he's going to Fox, I think, as analyst.
CBS.
CBS. Sorry, CBS.
No, that's okay.
I'm sorry. So he's waiting with his retirement. I don't think that Matt Ryan will play again a game. I don't think so. But what do you expect also from the Falcons, from Arthur Blank, to how to handle this badly story? Last year. Was it last year? Yes. Are you expecting something like a one-day contract, like a special Matt Ryan day, like a ceremony, like a statue? I don't know. Do you expect something?
I don't know that there'll be a statue just because, they haven't done that with anybody for the Falcons yet. And, the Ring of Honor that used to be out, well, the Ring of Honor in the stadium, and then they would have the displays outside the stadium. And like that, they've moved that inside now up on the upper level. I do believe there's no doubt that both he and Julio will be in the Ring of Honor relatively soon after they're officially retired. Julio, when he plays, he's still one of the best. Unfortunately, his body is to the point where it's like the last couple of years he was in Atlanta. He was great when he was in there, but you were lucky to have him for half the season. And I think part of that is he is a physical freak, and I think his body is on such a fine line that he probably is injured easier than you or I would be. Now we couldn't do the things he does,
no,
but I think we could get away with some things physically that he can't because his body is such a freak. Matt, I think, could still play. It's a question whether he wants to. That whole thing in Indianapolis last year, and it's hard to say where all that went wrong because you start with an offensive line that had been one of the best in the league, and all at once now they can't block anything. And the perfect example of that is Jonathan Taylor. He had been the best running back in the game for the last couple of years. I don't think he had over 51 yards last year, and that team, the defense, of course, they had a lot of injuries on defense, but, and it was clear, Irsay, the owner, denies it and all like that, but I'm sure he made the call to bench Matt when they did because of that guarantee, because he gets his salary this year. But had he been injured and couldn't pass the physical this year, on top of his salary, they would have owed him another $18 million on top of the salary. So I'm sure he made that call. And then when he fired the coach and brought in the new coach, let him make the call for a little while till it became clear that wasn't going to solve all the problems. Then let's put Matt back on the bench and put an armed guard on him so nobody can get near him and hurt him. But I think the only way Matt will play again is if there's a team that maybe is in the playoff hunt, and say a San Francisco, like from last year, if he's available, I could see him coming back for that. Because he's still in relatively good shape, especially to have played as many years as he has. And but whether he could have even decided himself, I'm done. But he's not going to say that because as long as he says he wants to play, the Colts still have to pay him. And he'd have to be pretty stupid to say, no, I'm done. You keep these millions, I'm done.
Yeah, of course.
But I do think absolutely he and Julio both will go in the Ring of Honor within a year or two of when they're officially done.
So you see them both in the bands with a ceremony or whatever?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. And it was same thing as what I was saying with the owners, the last few years with the Falcons and like Matt with the Colts. Like the owner, the quarterback, and this is a cliche, but it's true. When things are going well, the quarterback gets too much of the credit. And when things are going badly, he gets too much of the blame. And it was amazing they could do what they did with the offensive line like they had there for 2 or 3 years. And, the offensive line this past season was still not great, but it was worlds better. And then hopefully with a couple more pieces this year, we'll see them be as well. And if they can be as good in the passing game as they blocked in the running game, we'll be ready to go.
Okay. Thank you for this statement. Let's call it like this. Let us go a little bit to the community and all the Fambulance thing. Just tell me, please, what is the importance of the Atlanta Falcons community to you personally, and how do you think it was evolved over the years? I mean, how is it to be in this fan-based community in Atlanta? You said there are not so many diehard fans, but you built up this Fambulance. How many people you are now for the games normally?
For the tailgates, we will every week we'll have 30 to 40.
Okay.
Some games, depending on which one it is, like the one where you were there last year, the Chargers game, we were over 150 for that one. Now, in the old days, before the construction of the new stadium and split everybody up different directions and all like that, we averaged about 120 every week.
Wow.
And then with the construction, like originally our group was split into 4 different lots because they assigned your lots based on your seniority. Now we had enough. By the way, that last picture, the lady holding the rifle with my wife, that's Jonetha White, Roddy White's mother.
Cool.
We were in Cleveland for a game and went to, are you familiar with the movie A Christmas Story?
Well, I don't think.
It's over here. It's like a couple of the channels run that movie 24 hours a day around Christmas, stuff like that. And that rifle is supposed to be the Red Ryder BB gun the kid wants.
Okay.
But that was in Cleveland for that. But they split us into 4 lots based on seniority. We were fortunate we had enough seniority that we got the first choice of those. And I was able to keep making enough phone calls and talking to people that they got us into 2 lots across the street from one another. But basically the tailgate started over at that point. And to be honest with you, it's been a good thing because the tailgate had gotten so large that it was getting out of hand. And you can see, like, I did not remember you being at that Chargers game until I saw the picture. And then it kind of came to, because there's so much going on that I'm from here to here to here to here, you know. And
next time I will find you. Don't worry, John.
Definitely. And I think, you know, as you and I spoke the last time, I think I did talk to a couple of the people who were with you.
Okay.
Not you, because I remember them saying we're going to Charlotte. And I'm saying, let me hook you up with a couple of people in Charlotte. And but that's Warwick Dunn, if you didn't recognize him there. I'll tell you a funny Warwick story. This is Lamar Scott. He's a very dear friend. He's really family more than that. But I'll tell you a Warwick Dunn story. When he first came to Atlanta, and this was true, we did this. We were at an event with Warwick, and my wife told him, I hope you don't mind, I've been telling people you're my cousin, you know, having the last name. And he said, oh, that's fine. He said, you know, it could be on the Creole side. We could be related, you know. So go forward a few months, and we're at a game in Tampa. And after the game, we're going down to see the players, and Warwick's there, and we're chatting with him. He's just a sweetheart, you know. And a couple of his aunts come up, and he introduces his cousin Tom and Diane, and they're looking at us like, you know, we don't remember you from any of the family reunions or anything like that. But yeah, that's what I always think of when I think of him. But yeah, the tailgate.
He's a great person. He's a great person. I met him personally in 21 in London for a signature tour or hour. And hug him, and because he was, after Jamal Anderson, this present, the running back in the 2000s, and he was like an idol also, watching him playing, and really great person, total friendly and nice to us, making the photos and everything. It was a really pleasure to meet him last year.
And the thing to me about Warwick Dunn is, he won't be remembered as a great football player who did good things. He'll be remembered as a good man who did great things, and oh, by the way, played football, you know.
Oh, by the way, played football. Yeah, that's exactly the right phrase or sentence you have to bring for Warwick Dunn. Yes, perfect. Yep. He did and he do so much, building houses and for mothers and because of his history. And this came in mind when I get the interviews with Jesse Bates. Kindly, same story or same background, and he did also a lot for the community, and he spends about $1 million for charity in Atlanta just after he signs as incredible. What this kind of players do, yeah, in they don't have to, but they do it, yeah? And it's nice to see. Yeah, it's nice to see.
And I'll say this about Warwick's work with the houses and stuff. It's like the Nobis thing, where I said, the important thing, as much as the health, is teaching them to earn a living so they can do for themselves. And the thing with Warwick and the houses program he started is, before they can get in the program to actually get the house, they have to take financial courses, how to do minor repairs around the house and help with others doing theirs. And so they're not just getting that roof over their heads, they're getting something that they'll take pride in and be invested in. So they get that pride and that ownership, and it's not like just, well, they gave me this, they helped me earn this. And I think that's so important, And I know at one time, I don't know if this still holds true, hopefully it is, of all the houses they had done at that point, only one had ended up losing the house, and that was because the mother died.
Oh, okay.
And they had no other source of income to make the payments, and the kids were too young and like that. Because, they basically get them the house set up, equipped, even lawnmower and like that, and make the down payment and get them good financing terms and all like that. And then they go on from there. And the brilliance of the program is that the success rate has been so high,
Yeah. Sounds really good. Sounds really, really good. Some funny pictures here with the helmet of the Panthers. Just like a side note here. Okay, we put this over there. Give me please your feelings, because we talk about the community, and you now have an interview with one of the German-speaking community members. Let's call it like this. How was it for you when the Falcons announced 2.5 weeks ago, that they will have this global marketing rights for Germany? How was it for you and your family and the fan base? Did they notice this? Did they talk about this? How was it?
I think a lot of people noticed it.
Okay.
I don't think it impressed as many people. I'm sure there were more, but a lot of people noticed it but weren't as impressed as I was, and there are others like me. Just because I haven't been in Germany in quite a few years, but I've always enjoyed it. Going back to when I was in the Army, being in Germany and like that, I always liked it. So I was excited to see him go there. I love England too. Love going to the games there. But I was excited. I was very hopeful last year. They announced early that Tampa would be the home team and that it would be a division game in Germany. So I was very hopeful for that one. Now, my wife has never been to Germany, so I would really like that, to take her there. And it's one of those things, you'd like to just make a trip. Well, let's go to Germany, or let's go to Italy, or let's go to wherever. But the just everyday life gets in the way and it doesn't happen, but this gives us motivation to go, and I'd like for her to see it. I've always liked it. So it made a big impression on me. And now, like I say, a lot of people noticed, unfortunately, a lot of people can't afford to go. Now, I'm not like Bill Gates or Elon Musk or something like that.
Who is?
Exactly. But I've been blessed. I've been given more than I ever earned. So we've been able to travel, a lot more than most folks. So a lot of people see that and, well, I can't go, but I think the people that noticed it and they like it. It's not like Jacksonville, where in the back of their minds, they know sooner or later Jacksonville is moving to London, They may not want to admit that, but it's clear that's the long range plan. But it's not like a Falcon fan is going to sit there and say, well, they're going to move the Falcons to Germany or Spain or wherever. They can sit pretty comfortable that we're going to be here. So I think there would have been very few negative feelings about it, and a lot of us were really happy to see it.
Oh, is this nice to hear? Because you had, when you look at Twitter or social media and see answers on postings, oh yeah, they take away a home game and we don't want, but you say the majority was more happy about this.
Oh yeah, I think you'd find very few people that had a negative view of it. Like say, some of us were more excited than the others.
Okay.
Some of the rest, okay, it's cool, but there were a lot of us that were pretty excited about it because we were anxious. And I remember too back. Do you remember the World League of American Football?
Yes, of course, NFL Europe.
Yep, and I remember it was very popular in Germany. And we enjoyed that over here too.
I saw playing Kurt Warner.
Yeah,
live in Berlin. Yeah, so I didn't notice him, and it was like, okay, we're playing against, I think it was quarterback of the Amsterdam Admirals, if I'm not wrong now. But some years later, he plays in the Georgia Dome, the Super Bowl, and I was like, hey, wait, I know him.
Exactly.
He plays,
exactly. I just tell a
just 40 meters in front of me. So yeah.
I'll just tell you a quick side story here. My youngest son covered sports, high school sports in Atlanta for quite a few years for the newspaper. Mm-hmm. And he came home twice while he was doing that and told me he had watched a player that night who was going to be playing on Sundays in a few years. One was Deshaun Watson, and the other was Trevor Lawrence, and so it's like you say, when you see Warner, you don't think, but those were two that did make an impression on him, and there have been a few more here and there that made it to the show. But yeah, it's fun to see that, somebody you knew when they were young and a kid and like that. But yeah, we're excited and just anxious for the Falcons to play over there,
Cool. So we're not sure. We don't know the schedule for 2024, but it looks like it could be maybe also a divisional game against the Panthers, because we have now 5 teams in Germany, the Patriots and the Chiefs. Sorry, Super Bowl champion. The Patriots and the Chiefs will play their home games this year, and then the Panthers and the Falcons are still in the row. So maybe we see a divisional game. It would be, I think, a great thing for us here in Europe. I don't know how you see it then in Atlanta or maybe in Charlotte, but this would be quite fun. Or we have exactly 2 home games for each team. So so maybe we see you next year in Germany, isn't it?
I hope so. I certainly hope so. We'd love to make the trip, before I get too old.
No problem. I call Mr. Blank and say, hey, please make a private jet here for Mr. For the fan of the year. Yeah, for the fan of the year. So just try to make the step into the this time here for now 23, maybe a little bit talking about the team. You had the honor to announce again the 4th round pick, Clark Phillips. Yeah, we made in our last podcast session, we talk about Clark Phillips. We introduced him for the community, so it was quite fun to have you now in this week with the announcement. Did the Falcons came to you, or did you say, stop, sorry, I'm the fan of the year, I have to do it? How was it?
No, this time they took us out there as part of the fan of the year thing. Not every team did the draft trip as part of fan of the year, because every team did the Super Bowl this year.
Mhm.
And the Falcons did the draft. Now, I'd say probably half the teams took the teams out for the draft. Now, this is the third year of the Fan of the Year, but we were very fortunate not to win earlier because, and I say this not to brag, but a lot of our friends and stuff were saying, you should have been the first, you should have been this. No, we were very fortunate not to, because it was a member of our group who won the first one, Holly Thompson.
Mhm.
She was the first one, but that was COVID.
Okay.
So that squashed a lot of the stuff that
Mhm.
they would have done, the Super Bowl and all that. She did get to go to the draft, but only to outdoor activities. And the draft was kind of the substitute for the Super Bowl.
Mhm.
Then the second year, they narrowed it down. And don't hold me to these exact numbers. You know, I'm not willing to swear on the Bible, but it seems like they just took 3 to the Super Bowl. And then this year they took everybody to the Super Bowl. And so half the teams roughly took their winner to the draft, and half didn't. But the Falcons did, and then they asked me, was I gonna stay around for all 3 days? And I said yes. And I mean, they provided the transportation, the hotel, and all that. And they asked me if I wanted to do a pick. So sure.
How is it? How is it in the back end, or how we say backstage?
Backstage.
How is it? I mean, Roger Goddard is coming to you personally and give the envelope, or who is bringing you the envelope?
There's and I've done it twice. The last time was in Nashville, and where they were actually making the picks wasn't even in that facility. It was off several blocks away.
Okay.
And they would phone it in, and there was a table sitting there with a couple of young ladies, and the ones they expected to be drafted, their cards were already printed, so all they had to do was write in the number of the pick and the name,
okay,
and hand it to you. This year, it was where they were actually making the picks was on the facility behind closed doors and all like that. And they would come out with the card and hand it to you. And then you went on. But a funny story about the first one I did, if you'll allow me to digress again. I hope I'm not taking up too much time.
Everything you want.
The first time I did it, the pick was John Kaminsky, who's with the Lions and doing great now. They called it in, and I could hear over the speaker the name and stuff, and there's so much going on. I'm hearing the name and all like that, and I hear Kaminsky, and all you're hoping for is a Bill Smith or something on the name, because you got to go out there and read it. But most of the unique names they would have phonetically spelled too. They'd have it written correctly and then phonetically spelled. But they write it down, and I start out, and the stage manager there is standing there to send me out. And he tells me, if you got any questions, go to, I can't remember the guy's name that was the host, Scott Hansen. He says he's the best. He said, if you get anything goes wrong or you get confused, let him.
Scott Hansen, Red Zone.
But it went well, but they write it down, and I start out, and the stage manager just happens to look down at the card, and it has the name John Kaminsky, and the spelling doesn't really matter because I'm just going to read it. But it was a kicker out of southern Idaho or something like that. It escapes me at this point, but it was the wrong John Kaminsky. And he happened to see that, and he had been paying that close attention. Now I know why he's the stage manager. So he catches it, signals out to Scott to delay, and goes back and tells the girls, you've got the wrong Kaminsky. And they give me another card, write his name down and his position and the correct college, and then go out.
Ooh.
But, they definitely had good people, because this guy just glanced down. I've got it in my hand, holding it down by my side, and he sees it, But that would have been very embarrassing, if I'm out there reading the wrong player, wrong position. But this year, it went like clockwork. They came out, handed it there's one lady working the door to the facility where they're making the picks, I guess being sure nobody's wandering back there or whatever. Hands it to her. She hands it to me. I go it goes perfectly well, come out, come back. Now, backstage, I had a lot of fun backstage both times. This particular time, do you get the show, or did you get the show Modern Family over there?
I'm be honest, I don't watch TV the last couple of years, so I'm the wrong person to ask about TV shows. Sorry,
I just asked because there's not a lot of television like that now. I watch a lot of football, of course, and stuff like that during the season. But as far as serial television, what I don't. But this show, Modern Family, and it was huge over here. Okay. It ended in 2020, I think was the last year. But it was a great show. We thoroughly enjoyed it. It was one of those the whole family would watch. Well, Eric Stonestreet, who played Cam on that show, and born and raised in the Kansas City area, hardcore Chiefs fan, he was announcing the pick after me, and had a couple of kids from the boys club and stuff that were coming out there. Well, we chatted backstage, just super nice guy. I mean, super nice guy. And he took the photo of us together and stuff. And I'll say that, jump off a little bit, say this was one of the pictures that impressed everybody when I showed them that. You know, they're used to seeing me with football players and coaches. But with this guy, it impressed them because he was one of those that everybody loved. And he had one of the greatest lines I've ever heard. While we were chatting, and at one point we got around to talking about the show Modern Family, and I said, that was one of the shows that I was never sure who my favorite character in the show was. They were all so great. And he says, well, I hope this has settled that question for once and for all. So, but I mean, he wasn't egotistical. He was just, you know, self-deprecating. He couldn't have been nicer, but that made it very interesting back there. But we enjoyed that. The funny thing, and I wasn't going to take a photo of it anyway, but they had a computer screen up there telling who was picked and what team and where they went to school, just kind of rotating up. And one of the guys wanted to take a photo of it, and they came around and confiscated the phones after that. To this day, I don't know why that was so secretive, because it was all going out on television. But yeah, they took our phones still after we came back. So I don't. Well, I guess it's possible. You know, on some of the networks, it's delayed. So maybe they just didn't want it to get out early. But that's one of the things is everybody says, tell me when you're going to pick. Tell me when you're going to pick, because they tell you you're going to do it, but you don't know exactly when. Like when I announced Kaminsky, they traded up and traded down, and it got moved 2 or 3 times. So I was actually backstage longer then because they kept moving around. But this time it went fairly quickly, but it was a lot of fun both times, and they were very nice to us and thoroughly enjoyed it. Both experiences were great. And Kansas City is a great town too. I recommend that, seeing a game there.
Okay.
Because they're really hardcore. It's the same kind of thing, you know. Very few people move to Kansas City. Okay. The people there were born and raised in the area, 95% of them, you know, so they're hardcore. I always tell people, if you're only going to take one sports trip in your life, though, you got to go to Green Bay to a football game. Now, it would be different if you were a Bears fan or a Vikings fan or something. But
Lions fan.
If you go there as a Falcons fan or any other team, they just treat you like family. They're going to razz you, you know, they're going to pick at you, but it's all in good fun, you know, and they'll mess with you for a little while about how awful the Falcons are and this and that. But hey, did you come from Atlanta? Well, you tell them you came from Germany. Now they're really going to be impressed. But come on over and have a beer. Come on over and get something to eat.
It's nice. Green Bay or Wisconsin. Then it's on my bucket list as to see one away game with the Falcons in Green Bay. Definitely. Just tell me a little bit about your opinion about the draft. I mean, Clark Phillips is for the most of I would say the fan base, the community, the beat writers, reporters, whatever, like a steal. Yeah, how you saw all the draft this year? Yeah, Bijan Robinson and on 8. Was it okay for you? Was you excited? or was it like, oh, sorry, no running back so high? Was you more in this direction? What was your feelings about the draft?
My personal opinion, I wanted Skoronski, that offensive lineman out of Northwestern.
The boring Skoronski?
Yeah, exactly. The boring guy. Because I'm always of the belief you can never have too many big guys up front.
Yeah.
You know, and I keep going back to Lombardi one because that was when I was formed in football, was Lombardi. But I think there's almost no doubt that he's the greatest coach of all time, you know. But he used to always say people make football too complicated. Football is just two things: blocking and tackling. And if you block and tackle better than the other team, you're going to win every game. And I think Skoronski was a great pick. Now, that said, I don't have a problem with Bijan. There's absolutely no question he's the best running back in the draft and probably the best of the last few years. The most versatile. I think he fits perfectly into Arthur Smith's offense. So I think he's a really great pick. I wouldn't have picked him, but I'm perfectly happy with that pick. And the rest of the picks I thought were very well thought out, excellent pieces. You know, they weren't sexy. They're not going to get a lot of publicity and all like that. You know, Clark Phillips being a perfect example. You know, in Georgia, they don't even know who he was because, of course, you know, Georgia having a few really good years, they're might as well be the only team in the universe in Georgia, you know.
Yeah, of course.
So they don't even know who he is, but he's a really great player, you know. And I have to say this too. I enjoy college football. I do not follow it like I wish I had the time to do because, you know, Saturdays we're usually traveling to the game, you know, for Sunday. Okay. So I don't get to watch much, especially my younger son. He still watches a lot of college football, so I rely on him for a lot of my information these days. It's not like the old days where I knew, you know, and like this. So and he was high on a lot of these picks. And like I said, I told you what he told me about Deshaun and Trevor Lawrence and stuff when they were in high school. So I found I can usually trust him. Perfect example would be Algie Crumpler. Okay. When the Falcons drafted him, and he was a very unpopular draft pick in Atlanta, you know, because Reeves, he ran an old school offense, you know, 3 yards in a cloud of dust. Had a lot of success with it. I'm not bad mouthing, but it was not a flashy offense. And they're like, oh no, another tight end. But that son, he told me about Algie. He said, this guy is going to be good, and told me a lot about him. Well, I usually, my jerseys that I wear at the games, I normally wear a player's jersey and not a star, you know, because like Matt Ryan, Julio, guys like that, I love them. But, you know, they must see their jersey, even not on football days, they must see 100 of their jerseys a day around town. Yeah. So it can't mean that much to them, you know, not that they don't appreciate it and like it. So I always normally wear a lineman, linebacker, something like that, some guy who's not going to see his jersey. Well, when he was talking up Algie, I went out to get an Algie jersey to wear to the games. Cool. So one of the first games, I met him after the game. And to this day, when we see him, and he was always great to the fans, you know, you could tell he appreciated the fans, you know. And whenever we see him to this day, he will tell folks, this was the first person that I ever saw wearing my jersey outside of the family, you know, and some of the others like that. So that's why I do that, is because I think a lineman or linebacker or something like that, it means more to them than the superstar because they don't see it that often. And that's one of my favorite memories about Algie, you know. And he will see you in the stands and bring you a ball after he scored and stuff like that. Just wow. Sweetheart. I mean, nicest guy you'd ever meet. And, of course, he was a great player and became one of the absolute fan favorites, you know. So But he was not a popular pick at all. So it's hard to say. But Clark Phillips, I think, every year there's sleepers, and I think he may be one of the sleeper picks, this year.
Yeah.
Kind of, Algier last year, he didn't get a lot of attention when he got picked, and he didn't do much to start the year, but he didn't play much, but he's the kind of running back that I grew up on and like, he runs angry, super nice guy off the field, but not a kind person on the field, and that's what you want.
Oh, of course. Of course. That's it.
But yeah, I like it. And the same last year. I thought they're nice pieces, and you can see the plan starting to take shape, And
so you're confident for the future.
Yeah, and it's Arthur. To me, Arthur Smith is kind of like what you picture in your mind when you picture a football coach. Kind of grumpy and very serious and takes the time with the press that he has to, but he's not happy about it.
His hand move on press conferences, and
exactly.
Something what he's doing is like this. When he gets a question from one particular person of the reporters, I don't say any names, but I think everyone knows who I saying for is this particular hand, and the roll eyes. Okay, we don't go through. It's really nice. Grumpy, you said grumpy, and what else?
Grumpy and all business. He's got no time for all this other stuff. He takes the time that he has to, but if I'm here talking to you, I need to be out on the field watching practice, or I need to be in here looking at film. I got no time for this. Nice. And he looks a little disheveled a lot of the time. He's not made up and hair done and all like that when he comes out either. So he looks old school. I like that. And
yeah, he plays also an old school football. I mean, he runs the ball. It's this old fashioned way, but just run over your opponent. And I think we did this well last year. About how many yards? 3,500 yards, rushing yards. I think something like that. Wow, really nice. So I'm confident too for the next years. Hopefully this year, and they said about 20-21 games. So this is the right way. Hearing from the coach and from the players. So I think we going towards the right direction. Tom, one last question, and then you will be part of our tradition in the live talks. I will show you something, but this is the last thing then. What would you like to give new or future Falcons fans to take with them? So is there something you would say to all the new fans we will maybe get now in Germany or in the German-speaking world too? Is there something you would say?
I would say that it's a fun ride there. It can be frustrating at times. The Falcons have a habit of never making it easy, even when they're winning, but it is a fun ride, and you don't have the number of hardcore fans maybe some of the teams have, but the ones that are good people, and they stick with it, rise and fall, and they'll be there, regardless. And it's been fun. I wouldn't have traded it for the world.
Very good. Okay, Tom. Let us make a tradition in our live talk. We have I don't know why exactly. I can remember why, but we have a kind of exercise. The AJ Terrell exercise, and maybe you can do it like I do. I mean, it's nothing more than the incomplete pass, but we finish every live talk with getting some movement in our back and our hands. So maybe you can bring your middle fingers like this together, the arms like this, and then extend the elbows for the incomplete pass. We always say it's the AJ Terrell move, the best cornerback in the universe and a parallel universe and wherever we can imagine. So thank you so much for taking your time and give us this view into your history. I'm very confident that we will meet up the next time we will come to America, to Atlanta, and maybe we see you before in London. So you plan to come, so maybe we can see and meet us there. It would be a pleasure to see you there and have a chat personally. So yes, thank you so much. And maybe you have or not, you will have the last word. So give us please your last sentence, Tom.
Well, I'm looking forward to meeting you again in person. Looking forward to coming to a game in Germany. I have tickets for London. Hopefully we're going to be there. I got some doctor issues going on, so we'll see how that goes. But I do have my tickets. Right. And we'll look forward to having you in Atlanta any case. And just let us know when you're coming, and we'll show you the old Southern hospitality.
Thank you very much. Thank you, and also for the audience to cover us until this 2 hours and 10 minutes. Thank you so much. See you next time on Tuesday on our live talk, and we will talk over this for sure. Thank you very much, and have a good day. See you, Tom.
Thank you. My pleasure.